Hello. I'd like to take a look at a topic that I would call, what is the difference between narcissism versus egocentricity? And I find the topic of narcissism in general interesting because, well, it's quite arguable there is quite a bit of narcissism today, especially in our country. I think there's also a lot of narcissism bashing, if you will, where this kind of a trait or defense mechanism is put down quite a bit, when some other ways of coping are actually, in my opinion, much less functional for people. So then I suppose, in my mind, I've always wondered, well, to what extent am I a narcissist? And then if not so, then why would I be so interested in myself all the time, say, or talking only of myself? Well, I suppose then you might say, well, maybe there's two different things going on here, completely different. That we can have a narcissistic element that wants us to believe we're number one, at least in our own pond, so to speak, our own little sphere of life. Or we can, let's say, not feel we're number one, but be very self-absorbed, if you will. Very focused on ourselves, and actually have very low conceptualizations of our value compared to others, but still be very self-focused, as I call it. Or I suppose then the term egocentrism coming into play, where we are focused just on ourselves. And I'm not real keen on words like narcissism and egocentrism, because they are kind of words that give us a negative connotation, put down words, if you will. But at any rate, what do I mean then? What are we talking about by this word egocentrism? Well, I think, for instance, of a very good friend I had for many years. She is probably about 83 now, and I'd say about 20 years ago she initiated a separation in her marriage. And one of the leading points she had mentioned, I'm not sure this was the biggest factor, but she said that her husband had been too into himself. Now, she never used the word egocentric, but it stimulates a lot of thought. For I myself have struggled a lot in life with being too into myself too, at certain points in my life especially. So if this isn't an attempt to feel number one, what is it then? And it strikes me that what this could be, almost in a nutshell, is a focus on trying to survive in life, and either physical survival, getting our needs met, or having a feeling of safety from pain. So we're talking then an attempt to make sure we will live for the immediate future, not die, quote, unnecessarily, just right now, but secondly, to have a sense of safety from physical or emotional harm. Emotional, I mean especially in terms of injury to our self-esteem. Now, I suppose at this point in time, the phrase that has been mentioned to me from time to time comes to mind of make sure you get your basic needs met before you try and help others. And some people might then give the illustration of being on an airplane and there being a possible malfunction on the plane and oxygen masks falling down from the ceiling. And we're told to make sure we put our oxygen mask on first before trying to help our child. That we basically have to ensure our own safety before we can help others. I suppose not just our physical safety in that sense, but our emotional safety too. And then I think this is exactly where this term egocentrism comes into play. That how can we help others if we're suffering emotionally? And I mean especially in terms of feeling marked fear. Fear for our emotional survival, say. Fear of suffering some kind of emotional pain, not just physical pain coming up. So then we might say that so-and-so being too into himself or herself, or being egocentric, could usually and simply be an attempt to feel safe or safer, maybe just emotionally usually. So if we don't feel emotionally safe, say about our self-esteem, well then I suppose that we can't be of much use to others, can we? And this is only a natural phenomenon, I guess, and nothing bad about it. And if we're at a point in time in our lives that we are feeling of great vulnerability to emotional harm, I suppose we're going to focus only on ourselves to try and feel safer before we can help anyone else. And there's nothing wrong with this. I think it's just ordinary, natural. I don't suppose you can even call it pathological. It's simply a place we can be in life, and hopefully grow less and less vexed by, troubled by, hindered by. And I think I would say then at this point that I think it's good for us to try and ascertain, realize the extent to which we're simply trying to feel safer about our self-esteem, say, and focused on ourselves and our own survival in general, physically too, as opposed to what we might want to call narcissism, either healthy or unhealthy, where we start thinking in terms of cognitive mistakes, if you will, about our own value. Maybe we estimate ourselves to be number one in our pond, our sphere, so to speak, and we're incorrect about that, or furthermore we do that and then also start to put others down, to try and hurt others' self-esteem, say, as additional protection. Then I think that's where things can get a little more sticky and toxic. Of course, no one wants to be around anyone in the long term who just thinks of themselves, even if it's only for the purpose of survival. So that can be problematic too, of course. People all want to be listened to. They all have their own needs. We all do. Who wants to be around someone who can't, quote, minister to our needs from time to time? There has to be some reciprocity, surely, right? But at the same time, I think it could be a relief to those of us, myself included, to realize that, especially if we're sensitive to the word narcissism in general, thinking we're possibly so to a great extent, or worried others might call us that I think it can actually be a comfort to us all to think that maybe we don't have so much of a problem with narcissism always, as opposed to this focus on just being into ourselves too much, too egocentric for the purposes of something much different, just being preoccupied with our own safety, without having some kind of cognitive misappraisal going on or putting others down, as I would repeat again. I hope these thoughts I have that I'm not so sure have been written on much or talked of. But anyway, these are some that I've had, and I hope it's useful to people, and I wish you well.